We are taking a trip through the east coast of the United States.
For years, the east coast of the US as we know it has been New York, Niagara, and Washington, D.C.
Why is New York called the Big Apple?
The story goes back to the horse racing times, and when people were into horse racing, it meant like the most prized racetrack.
Going to the Niagara is just going and seeing the falls, but you can experience it in very different ways.
You can see it on a boat, and you get pretty close.
The thunderous sound of water just gushing down is crazy.
Let's go to Miami because it is a beautiful city. The movie Dostana really made it very famous in India. That is Miami for us, right? And it is pretty much like that.
All of these things mean that the East Coast is not just a one-time holiday. You can keep going there multiple times, and different times you can have different experiences. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. Today we are going to the United States of America and we are taking a trip through the east coast of the United States. Now, Sunila, I wanted to start this episode by asking you a simple question. Often in our social circle, we'll have people who will say that, oh, I'm doing a trip through the east coast of the US. But when they say I'm doing a trip through the east coast of the US, what do they really mean?
So, Neil, when someone says they are going to the East Coast, they typically mean the upper East Coast of the US, is what I feel. Or maybe the mid East Coast, we would say. And maybe a little inland as well. Like, for years, the East Coast of the US, as we know it, has been New York, Niagara, and Washington, D.C. But there are so many other cities which are like really stunning, and you can easily add them on if you're actually doing the whole East Coast.
What are some of those cities that come to your mind?
Some of the cities that come to my mind, like let's go a little north. Boston, which is a beautiful city. I've been there many times and I really enjoy it. It's lovely. A little bit to the south when we come, there's Orlando, there's Miami, all of Florida is out there. And then there are smaller cities as well. Philadelphia is another one which is kind of on the route between Washington, D.C. and New York. So you can easily combine all of this to have a great holiday.
So, I have done New York, I've done Niagara, I've done Washington, D.C., and I've done Orlando. I haven't done anything else on the East Coast. You have done much more than me. But I thought, let's start this episode with the Big Apple, New York.
Yeah.
And let me ask you my second question. Why is New York called the Big Apple?
So the story goes back to the horse racing times. And, when people were into horse racing, it meant like the most prized racetrack. And that is why it was called the Big Apple. It's like winning the best that you can ever think of winning. That was the New York's racetrack. And that is why it was called like winning the Big Apple. And then the jazz musicians kind of liked the term and they used it when they got a good gig or they got a good performance. They would say, oh, I'm performing at the Big Apple. And then the tourism marketing kind of caught on and they ran this whole series of around the Big Apple. And that's how it gets its name.
So now that you've figured out or you've told us why it's called the Big Apple, I remember you telling me that New York is also called New York for a reason and there's a super interesting story behind it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Do you know what New York was called before it was called New York? Let's start there.
What was it?
It was called New Amsterdam.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because the Dutch came in before the British and they laid claim to the land. And of course, before the Dutch, the Spanish came in and then the French and the British followed. But when the Dutch came in, they wanted to kind of create their own home out here. So they decided to call it New Amsterdam. And when the British came in and took over the space, they wanted a reminder of their homeland. So they changed the name to New York. And that's the New York we know today.
That's quite fascinating. If you think about New York, I would say so many things come to your mind, right? There's Central Park. There is the Statue of Liberty. There's Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes.
That is great. So many of the Bollywood movies have really shown us New York in different avatars, although some of them have not been filmed in New York, but rather filmed in Toronto, right?
A lot of the Hollywood movies are also not filmed in New York.
Oh, really?
Most are filmed in Toronto because Toronto resembles New York in that sense. And I remember when I was in Toronto, they said it's easier to shoot here. So what do you think is New York is actually Toronto?
So what are some of the things that have like left a mark with you when it comes to New York? What do you like most?
So, Neil, I was in New York, luckily for the India-Pakistan cricket match.
Uh-huh.
And, I think for me to stand there on in the stadium, which was also a makeshift stadium, and just watch thousands and thousands of people dressed in blue, it was amazing. We were all also in blue. Of course, we had our cricket t-shirts on. But I saw all those, NRIs and even Indians who had traveled out there. I think for me, that day in New York and in Central and in Times Square, when you see all so many fans and you see Hindi music and you see all of that going, I think it was really special for me. Times Square is stunning because whatever time of the day you go, like after the match, we went in to one of the rooftop bars. New York has a lot of these rooftop bars, and definitely it's a lot of fun. And I think it was like 3 or 4 in the morning. We came down, and still with all those billboards and those flashing lights, you could just stand there, and I don't know, you just get so much energy out there. There is something in the air.
It's just so bright, right?
Yeah.
And like, I think whether you go in the day, whether you go at night, and I think New Year's is when there's the Times Square ball drop that
Yes,
happens, and
yes.
people really
Yeah.
queue up for that.
Yeah.
And I had like a friend of mine who was like, "Oh, we decided to stand there from 4 p.m. until midnight." And
People
you just
typically
can't
go
move.
at 3 o'clock or something. I think one of the better things to do is take one of the restaurants in Times Square from where you can see it, and then you're
And
much
just
more
sit there,
comfortable.
right? That's a pretty good idea. I remember we had gone during Christmas
Yes.
and the winters, and it was really cold. But I think experiencing New York during that time was also super interesting. You recently took a helicopter ride, also,
Yeah,
right? What was that experience like?
It was quite nice, though there are many helicopter companies, so you should be careful where it's starting from.
Okay.
Like I realized the one I had booked was pretty far off, so we actually had to travel quite a bit of a distance. And another thing that happened is that they ask you for your weight. And you must definitely give that in, because there was a person, and actually he was from India, just before me, and they had to cancel it because he was pretty overweight, and they actually charged him for 2 people. And then he couldn't fly. So, all of these little things you have to keep in mind. So, think of where you're starting from, because it's really quite special to fly over the city, see the skyscrapers, see Central Park from the top. It's quite amazing. And of course, the Statue of Liberty. It's really stunning to
Or
see
you
it
just
from
see
the
the
top.
skyscrapers, you go towards the Statue of Liberty, you see all of the bridges, and then come back. Is
Yeah,
that
the guide would the pilot is also a guide, so he will give you these little snippets. It reminded me of the Hugh Grant movie 2 Weeks Notice, and they have a similar kind of a scene in that, where they are in the helicopter flying over and then looking at the Rockefeller Center, Empire State Building, and all of that. So for me, that was really special.
I think you get different views of New York from different places, right?
Yeah.
You can go up the Empire State Building, you can go up the One World Trade Center, you can take a boat to the Liberty Island where the actual Statue of
That's
Liberty
new
is.
building, Summit One Vanderbilt. That is also really
that a
nice.
new one?
It's very nice, and they have different like immersive art inside. So when you're going up, one of the places I really enjoyed, because you can really behave like a child, and they had these little balls that look like steel, so they reflect your face and everything, and you can just go in and take 1,000 photos, but also get some good views.
I mean, we can continue talking about New York, right? But I guess a lot of people know about New York. Let's talk about the other cities of the East Coast. And I think the first one that comes to my mind is Niagara, which, of course, as the name suggests, has the Niagara Falls, the famous Niagara Falls, right? And I think often people mistake that going to the Niagara is just going and seeing the falls. But that's not true, right? You can experience it in very different ways. What are those different ways?
I think I would say look at the falls from the top. So again, a helicopter ride here. If you haven't done one in New York, 100% do it over the Niagara. It's very, very special. Then you can see it on a boat. So you have made of the mist, and you get pretty close. And then, you have those ponchos that you can wear and all that, but enjoy the Niagara. It's Niagara Falls, touch the water, go there. And then with Cave of the Winds, you can actually get really close. So you can walk out there and see the falls, because the Niagara Falls are 3 falls actually. So you have the Horseshoe Falls, you have the Bridal Falls, and the American Falls. The Horseshoe Falls, of course, are on the Canadian side.
And that's what we see most of the pictures of,
Correct.
right?
That's what you see photos of. And if you have a Canadian visa, crossover, go and see that from the Canadian side as well. If you don't, then I think the helicopter ride becomes very important, because from up there, you can actually see the proper shape of the falls.
I would say even if you have the visa, still do the helicopter
Yeah.
ride, because
Yeah.
I totally agree that the beauty of the Niagara Falls is the horseshoe fall, and of course the other two that you also see, and the thunderous sound of water just gushing down is crazy. But one thing I'd like to also mention out here is that when you're on the falls, you should read the stories of how people have tried to go down the falls.
Yes.
Some of them have ended in a fatal way, but someone has gotten into like this massive round chamber and then
Yeah.
tried to go down falls. Someone has tried to kayak down falls. Someone has tried to do different things. So that I think is pretty crazy. But another thing that I would also mention is that when you're going to experience the Cave of the Winds, remember that you're going below the Niagara Falls. And when you're there, it's often that, you stand there, oh, the water's cold, I'm going to get out. But just stand there and admire the falls, because that.
Admire and hear it. It's like that
Exactly.
roaring sound. I think that all of that put together makes it special. Also, remember to go back at night.
Yeah.
Because what often happens is you're going in the morning and, just go back, because illuminated Niagara looks stunning.
Yeah, it's
So
very
go out
well
there.
lit, different
Yeah.
colored lights. Yeah, and would you say that it is also a good thing to visit during the winters, because when the cold wave hits the Niagara, of course, Niagara doesn't freeze, but the water
part
below,
of
like
it.
it's like just ice, ice, ice all the time. So
I would say so. I think also a good time would be just before spring, when the water's starting to thaw, and then you can kind of enjoy a little bit more, because the weather will only get warmer with each day that you're out there.
Yeah.
And Neil, when I was in Canada, I saw it from the Canadian side, and actually at that point they had this thing where you could go and light up the Niagara Falls. So I actually have a certificate that says I lit up the Niagara Falls.
how does that work?
And they have a control panel, and you can change and put in the
Oh.
colors you want. So I was like literally
that's pretty
keying
cool.
in the colors I want, and then you can look at the Niagara and say, "Hey, I lit up the Niagara Falls."
okay, well, that's Niagara then.
Yeah.
Which city should we go to next?
I think we can go to Washington D.C.
Okay, the capital.
Yes.
And of course, you can go check out the White House. You can see the Capitol building.
Yeah.
You can see the Washington Monument. But
The
what?
Lincoln Memorial.
Yeah. What stands out for you in this city?
I think, Neil, we are, for people who will be traveling now in March and April, they're going to have the time of their life when they are in Washington, D.C.
Why is that?
Because Japan gifted cherry blossom trees to Washington, D.C.
Oh.
And if you are not in Japan or anywhere in Asia, Korea or, China and the other places, Taiwan, you can see the cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. So it makes it really special all along the Potomac River. I think it's really beautiful to go in at that time of the year. Of course, throughout the year, because of how well laid out Washington, D.C. is, it gives you that sense of space. And I felt the same in Canberra, in Australia. Like you go in and you see the sky, you see space out there. Like, especially, in a trip like this, when you're combining different cities, and then you come from New York, where you've been with the tall skyscrapers and all of that, and then you come into Washington, D.C., and then suddenly everything's spread out, because I think you cannot build a tall structure here.
Yeah, some of the cities around the world have this rule, and
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, I think, because you just like have this flat kind of city that's there. But I'm glad you said that, because often people think that the cherry blossoms can only be seen in Japan, but that's not true, right? There is China, there is Taiwan, there's South Korea where you can see them. There's Mumbai where you can see
Yes.
them, and also you can see them in Washington, DC. Well, Washington, DC, because people often mistake
Say
Washington
Washington.
and Washington, DC, because they are two completely different things.
And Washington is on the other side
Yeah,
of the
Washington is
state.
West
It's the
Coast, right?
state
And
is
Washington,
West
DC
Coast,
is East
Seattle.
Coast.
So,
Yeah.
you need to be careful. Another thing about Washington, D.C. is a lot of the museums are free. So, and the museums are nice. They are quite interactive and they are fun. So especially with kids, I think it makes for a great trip. Or if you're a museum buff, then take your time because a lot of your trips are anyways free. You can get in
Yeah.
and see a lot of things. I quite like the spy museum out there, and you know what? You can actually become a spy for a day. So they have this
Oh, yeah.
cool little thing where
That's
you
pretty
can
cool.
be a spy when you go in and do a treasure hunt kind of thing. So I think it's quite fun. And another place I liked is when I had visited Washington D.C. I also went to Alexandria, which is about an hour away, and it's like suddenly going back in time. And you
Why is that?
have George Washington's memorial. You have a building there. All it's like all those colonial buildings and small town U.S. is what you get to see. Beautiful food and amazing ice creams and stuff. So it was just a cute place to visit.
So, we've spoken of these three places. One question I wanted to ask at the start and I totally forgot about was that how do you go from one place to another? Do you fly everywhere? And would you recommend doing a self drive if you're going on a customized holiday?
So you can fly,
Yeah.
but you can also take the car, and definitely you can do self-driving in the US. Of course, it's opposite to India, so you have to be a little comfortable with the left-hand drives. It's easier when you have someone with you rather than just taking the car out alone. I've also driven in the US, not so much on the East Coast, but more on the West Coast in California. And the first day was a little tough, but by the second day you get used to it. So it's not that tough. You can do it
Okay.
definitely.
And let's say New York, Niagara, Washington, if I were to do a trip, just
And
the
there are trains as well. Amtrak runs trains, so you could always
what
take a
would you
train and go
suggest?
in.
What would you suggest?
I would say drive,
Drive.
because then you
But
can
New
stop
York
at a
to
lot of
Washington
different
also
places.
is a long drive.
Yeah, but Neil, you can stop in between, like say you can stop at Hershey's Chocolate Factory and come back with a bag load of Hershey's Kisses and other things. So, there are interesting places. The Corning Museum of Glass. So, and then you can extend a little bit into Virginia, and which is the home of country music. So,
Yeah.
of course, and if you're there during autumn colors, you'll have some of the best sightseeing out there. So there are many things to do in between. Of course, it all depends on how much time you have. Short of time, just take the flight and go.
Makes sense. And before we move on to the next city, what is a good time to visit?
So I would say if you don't like the cold, then after December, like December is great because of Christmas and New Year. So
Yeah.
if you're going
But
for
it's also
that,
cold, right?
it's very cold.
Yeah.
So like we saw. So but if you're going there, then that's fine because you look at the Christmas lights. And in New York, you can go to Brooklyn and enjoy the Christmas light. They actually have a tour there and all of that. But other than that, January, February can be pretty dark and dull. So leave that aside and go at any time. So from, so I would say mid March or March end. If you like summer, then June onwards, June to September would be a great time. For autumn, again, September, October, November. So, it falls pretty much during our holiday season and you can travel at any time then.
So more or less a year-round destination, you
Yeah,
would say.
just leave January, February out because things are a little dark, but otherwise, and cold, really cold. Yeah.
What is the next place we should talk about?
I think we can, since we are talking Washington, D.C. and the capital and everything, let's talk about Philadelphia.
Okay.
Because it is another city probably known to many people for the movie Rocky.
Yeah.
Because the steps there became known as the Rocky Steps.
Yeah.
So that was something quite special.
What's really there to see or do in Philadelphia?
Neil, Philadelphia is really an important place because it is the place where the Declaration of Independence was signed. So you can go to the Independence Hall, and it's quite historic to stand where the American Independence Declaration was signed there. You can see Liberty Bell. And then you have the Benjamin Franklin Highway, which is this beautiful street which is lined by the flags of all the countries. So it's known as the Champs-Élysées of Philadelphia is what they call it. And the food, there are so many different places in Philadelphia, and there is theater as well. But I remember seeing a musical there. But the food is really stunning. The restaurants and cafes are very nice. So the Philadelphia steak or the Philadelphia cheesecake. I mean, the food is named after the city, so that's something you
That's
can't
true.
miss.
You mentioned theater, and this was a question I wanted to ask you during New York. Was you often get asked, did you go visit the Broadway or
Right.
did you visit a Broadway
Right.
show? So what is a Broadway, and what is the entire like thing around Broadway? Like what makes it so cool?
So, theater started in New York along the Broadway. In London, we call it the West End. Soho and West End is where we go to watch theatre. And when we say theatre, these are live musicals or plays, and they're performed live every day. The sets are stunning, the backdrops are amazing, the actors are really nice, and it's live music, so it's a very different kind of performance. And there's a really nice story about the Broadway and why it was called the Broadway. It did become the theatre district, but historically, this was actually a Native American trail. So this road ran all the way in New York, like a complete road. And when then the Dutch came in, they called it the Breadeweg, which means a Broadway. They called it the main street, and that's how Broadway got its name as well. That it became Broadway, and then it started attracting a lot of people because people realized there's a lot of business that is happening around, and when there's business, you want entertainment, and that's how the theater district was also.
I'm glad you covered this because, like, many of us, including me, did not know of this.
In fact, Neil, Wall Street also comes from the Dutch. Like when you say I went to the Wall Street area or the New York
I mean,
Financial District.
like there's Wall Street and there's Dalal Street, right?
Correct.
Like, and
Yeah.
you hear about it all the time. So
Yeah.
what do you mean?
So the
it
Wall
was-
Street,
yeah.
when the Dutch came in, they took that part of New York as theirs and they built a wall to protect them from the British.
Oh.
And that wall, like you can see the remnants of it when you visit there. So definitely next time you go there, go and walk and walk in the financial district. And of course, the wall doesn't remain, but the street along the wall became Wall Street, and that's how. And the Dutch were known for setting up stock exchanges. They had one in Amsterdam, so why not have one more in New Amsterdam? And that's how the whole stock exchange came.
Wow, so
up
we have
there.
we have uncovered so many things, right? Big Apple, New York,
York.
was New Amsterdam, Wall Street was because there was a wall out there. What is
Broadway is
Broadway?
Broadway.
Yeah, how to
The
see the
Dutch
Niagara.
have so much that they've given to the city in a way,
that's
right?
that's pretty cool when you think of it, and I'm super happy that we've covered all of this on this episode. But now moving on to the southern part of it, and I often say that once you get to Miami, Orlando, and all of that, it becomes more fun. The weather's warmer, the water's also warmer. So, what should we talk about Orlando?
Sure, but before that, when you're in Philadelphia, many people often just quickly pass it by. Just take a little more time, and the countryside along Philadelphia is also quite nice. So, the countryside there, like one of the cities there, is known as the mushroom capital of the world. So, everything to do with mushrooms you will get
yeah?
there. And then you have Longwood Gardens, which are these beautiful gardens, one of the biggest gardens in the US with fountains and, flowers and trees and plants. And even in winter, these get lit up. So they are quite stunning. You can do a hot air balloon also out there. And then you have Amish country not far away. So the Amish people are people who still live in the old ways. They dress in the old manner. They still farm like that. So the US is such a contrast every time I look at it, Like you have New York on one hand. You have the whole tech industry. And then you still have people who are doing all of this. So...
I was in the US one time and I asked some locals that, how many countries have you been to? And they said, we've been to only one country, that is the US. And I was like, what? Like, why have you not traveled around? Because he's like, in the US, there are lakes, there are national parks, there are mountains, there are beaches, there are sand dunes, there are hikes, treks, trails, everything that
Food, entertainment, cities.
Literally.
Yeah.
So it's a world in itself. And if you were to just try to explore the US, it'll take you more than a lifetime, right? So, yeah. So, okay,
I mean, look at us. Even on the East Coast, you mentioned Miami and the Southern Coast, but we still haven't reached there. There's so much to do.
So, what should we talk about next?
So, I think let's go to Miami.
Okay.
Because it is a beautiful city. The movie Dostana really made it very famous in
Yes.
India. For us, I think that is Miami for us, right? And it is pretty much like that. It's also quite similar to Mumbai in the sense that it is a very important place for Art Deco architecture. So Marine Lines and the whole area of Mumbai where you see Art Deco, you see similar Art Deco architecture in Miami as well. The South Beach is one of the most famous places in Miami, and the South Beach Diet, which is pretty famous again. All of that is in Miami. So if you're going there for work or if you're going there for a holiday or something, extend your stay and do a lot of things, because from Miami you can also do a few excursions. So you can get into the Everglades National Park, and actually go on an airboat and look at alligators and crocodiles and things like that. So you can be in the city on one day and go off into nature on the other. Wynwood Walls here is again a place where you see a lot of graffiti. And that is also again something that Miami is known for, other than again good food out there.
I would
So
add events also because
yes,
now Miami also has the Formula
yeah,
One that
yeah,
happens, and I think witnessing Formula One in the US is a completely different experience. It happens in three places, and Miami is one of those. I would also say if you're in the US, try to catch an American football game because the American football game is something where you'll probably be watching it. You may not understand the rules, but everyone's really into it. If you want a lazy picnic idea, you can go watch a baseball game, something that you can definitely do, whether you're in New York or anywhere on the East Coast. So definitely do that. And I think I didn't know about this Art Deco architecture, but I have definitely heard that Miami is the place that you can do a lot during the day and also a lot during the night. So better come prepared for the
the
nightlife as well.
Vizcaya Museum and Gardens are there. So yeah, you can just extend into night for quite some time. So it's
Okay.
nice,
Now, I haven't been to Miami, but I have been to Orlando.
right?
And when I went to Orlando, it just seemed like this city which was filled with amusement parks,
Yeah.
which was filled with entertainment options for all ages, whether you're a teenager, whether you're like a small child or you're an adult, and was, I think, filled with roller coasters for some reason. So, what is your take on Orlando?
So you're right. It's all of everything that you said, all of the above. But what surprised me when I reached Orlando is I least expected to go shopping and come back with an extra suitcase from there. Because the Orlando outlets and outlet shopping in the US is a big craze.
Yeah.
Simon Shopping Center is one, and there are many others. So, in all these outlet shops, you get all the fashion brands, and starting from your normal brands like your Nike and Adidas up to the luxury brands, you name it and you have it there, and you get them at a discount. So it's like suddenly you're in this fabulous place where everything's so much cheaper. So Orlando has one of the best outlet shops. So you should definitely keep that and keep half a day, if not a full day, for that when you're there. And yeah, you're right. I mean, you name it, and there's a theme park based on that. Like you think of a theme, and you have a theme park, right? You have SeaWorld, which is also, and I know you mentioned you like the Abu Dhabi one. I still haven't seen that, but SeaWorld here is also quite
This
special.
SeaWorld in Orlando also had some crazy roller coasters, I remember.
yeah.
Now, I went to this SeaWorld 15 years ago, so of course it has changed since then. But yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, my memory, and it's been some time since I've been to Orlando, but Orlando and Kissimmee, the whole area together, like insane parks. And actually, once I went for a recce, like to see the hotels, and I think I walked 20,000 steps every day. So one tip really here is to make sure you have good shoes. Don't go to Orlando without comfortable shoes, because in the theme parks you're walking all the time. Keep a hat with you, keep a water bottle with you, and shoes. These three things are most important when they're in the theme parks. And then Magic Kingdom and all of its rides, the roller coasters, the studios, Universal Studios, Six Flags. I remember doing an itinerary where every day, I think for a week, they stayed in Orlando, this family, and every day was one different park.
Yeah,
And you still don't get tired.
And I would not say it's only for children. It's
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah,
Like you can just go there and have a good time, and you could probably just go to Orlando and come back, and that's your trip. But yeah, I think that's
Anil, that's why you see so many villas in Orlando on rent. So, in Orlando, you can stay in a hotel, and even within the hotels, there are villas because multi generational families would like to come in
Yeah.
there. So, you can actually go in together, and maybe the kids can go out more, the grandparents take it easy, and then there are certain places where everybody can enjoy together as well. So, yeah, I think Orlando is a great family place.
awesome. So I think now the last 25 minutes we've spoken about a lot. I wanted to end this episode with trying to get to the southernmost tip of continental USA, which is Florida Keys, right? Which is like this group of islands, and it is connected by bridges. And though that drive going from one island to the other is spectacular. You just have to look at photos, and then you'll just be like, oh, I also want to go there. And I remember there are long bridges out there where at the time when they were built, they were among the longest bridges in the world.
Yes.
So Of course, here a self-drive really makes sense. But what are your 2 cents if I'm talking about the Florida Keys?
Neil, I've been obsessed with the Florida Keys. I still haven't had the chance to go there, but my obsession is to drive on that 7 Mile bridge. You know, the bridge that connects
Yeah.
the. Of course, now we have our Atal Setu and we have our coastal bridge, so it kind of gives you the same feeling. But it is quite special to think of these tropical islands that are connected to Miami with this bridge, right? And many people would do it as a day trip also. It's 3 hours one way, so be prepared for a really long day. But if you're short of time and you're in Miami, do it. But I would say staying there would make it really special. Key Largo is known as the diving capital of the world, and it is known for scuba diving. Then you have Isla Morada, and then you have Key West as well, which becomes like the southernmost point. And there are many other islands. So again, seafood, your water activities, water sports, beautiful resorts. It's really the perfect holiday place. So I think it's a great way to end the episode with the Keys.
Yeah, I think we've discussed New York, Niagara, Washington, D.C., Miami, Philadelphia, Florida Keys, have touched on many of the excursions that you can do and covered a whole lot of different things that you can do on the East Coast. One thing I'd like to say here is that all of these things mean that the East Coast is not just a one-time holiday. You can keep going there multiple times, and different times you can have different experiences. But before we end the episode, do you think we've missed out on anything?
Neil, there are many things. This can't be an exhaustive list because there are just so many places on the East Coast that you can add. But I think one place I would like to add, we mentioned it a little bit when we started, is Boston. And Boston in Massachusetts is amazing. I've been there in winter as well, and it was absolutely crazy. But it's a beautiful city, and one of the highlights for me actually was doing the tour of Harvard, the Ivy League school that we all know, and we all have an aspiration at least to visit, if not study there. But you can do a tour with one of the students. And it's really nice because they take you and they tell you little stories of everything out there. So that was really something quite special for me. And the other thing you can do there, which I thought was a lot of fun, was relive the Boston Tea Party. So, the famous Boston Tea Party where they threw all the tea into the ocean. So you can go to one of those 18th century ships, and it's like a little museum, so it's interactive. It's on the ship itself. You see all of that, and they have this mock tea box that you can pretend that you're a part of the Boston Tea Party and throw it out.
That's
So
a good
it was fun.
experience. Well,
And you have the Freedom Trail, and then you have this person dressed in the colonial dress, like the old time dresses, and she takes along. And I knew it was going to be a fun trip because she said, hey, you're from India, I like you. What do you and I have in common? We both got independence from the British, so we're going to make a good team. And they were funny, they were nice. So Boston was cool.
awesome. So I think let's end this episode of the East Coast on this note. I'm sure in a few weeks we are going to do the West Coast.
Yes.
And I'm sure in a few weeks after that we are going to talk about Hawaii and
More
Alaska
things.
also. So listeners and viewers, stay tuned for all of these things. But I'm sure we've missed out on something. So let us know in the comments or by emailing us at Neil, Neil, @veenaworld.com, or Sunila's email is sunila@veenaworld.com. We love hearing your feedback, and thank you for tuning in to this episode of Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. See you next time with another fun topic. Until then, keep traveling and keep celebrating life. Bye.
Bye.